shared a trauma experience, they shared an experience, and they had rallied around a certain kind of artistic expression, and then they felt betrayed by something that happened. And so the entire community just crumbled. Dominic Barter, who was teaching in the slums of Brazil, and finally, got fed up with the violence and invited knife-wielding gang members and grandmothers into the circle together.
What is restorative justice? How can mentorship be most effective? And how do we engage in building bridges? Welcome back to Panacea9 podcast by Gloria Y as I continue my conversation with Mardi Edelstein, founder of Spectrum Mediation. In part 1, we explored the art of mediation and how transformative communication can change lives. With an example. Today, we're diving deeper into restorative justice, the importance of mentorship in mediation, and the lessons Mardi has learned from working across cultural, economic, and professional divides. Welcome back, Mardi.
Thank
Nice
you.
to have you again.
Great to be back. Thank you.
Great. Are you ready for another set of questions?
Absolutely. Your questions are stellar.
Okay, so
yeah, hit me.
questions I'm coming. I'm just preparing to shoot. All right. So you've trained in various restorative justice approaches, and I think you explained some of this in the last episode. How do these models differ from traditional mediation, and where do you see them having the greatest impact? Do you follow established models? I think you said you do in the last episode, but does the artist in you sometimes just injects things into it to make more magic? Can you go through that again, those models or modules that you explained before, and maybe there are more, and just explore this for us,
Sure.
please.
Absolutely. Or I should say, yes, and. I often pull that out because the answer is yes, I start with a model and I bring in tools from all the modalities I use and all the stories and all my faith background, the Baha'i faith background as being Jewish, growing up Jewish, I use that, and different cultural stories and different techniques I learned from healing modalities. So I talked last time about the interest-based method. I consider this like the classical. Being a musician, I liken it to like classical music, your scales, your harmony. And at the center of everything really is satisfying human needs. When people ask what I do as a mediator, I say, well, I'm lucky I get to help people get their needs met. That's my job.
Great thing to do.
Yeah. So very fulfilling. So I start with the interest-based method, getting curious, getting past positions to the interests that inform them. Then you mentioned restorative. So this is an exciting area of mediation that I wish I did more of. And so we're used to I think we all know about the traditional Indigenous model, the circle model of restorative mediation. And we are welcome to use this. It's not an appropriation. We've been told we're welcome to use this model. I have Indigenous friends who are out there teaching their own versions of it. And basically, it's a circle, not just of the classic kind of victim offender, two people in conflict, but the community, people who have been affected by it. So the first job is to determine who is in the circle. Then there's a talking stick. So the person who has the talking stick is speaking. No one interrupts. So it helps us focus on the speaker and we listen deeply. There's no cross talking. Really, it's a lot of empathy. We're listening to this slow expression of human need go around the circle. And then it may lead us to a solution. It just may lead to understanding or to peace. We don't know where it's going to lead. I actually have a supra-cultural circle model that I use that was fashioned by a teacher actually from Britain, named Dominic Barter, who was teaching in the slums of Brazil and finally, got fed up with the violence and invited knife-wielding gang members and grandmothers into the circle together to solve, this community problem. Said, leave your knives and your sticks outside and come in and let's have conversations. And he fashioned something which is different in structure but similar in intention. And it's a circle model. Again, you determine who's there from the community. He actually changed the language, though. He said, I'm not going to call it victim and offender, because very often we find that the offender used to be a victim or is a victim and is acting out.
Usually the case, though? Like abuse?
A lot of times bullies have a background of being bullied or being traumatized. And so we are discovering people's backstories and the the effects on how they come to the world and how they perceive the world and how they act to others. And of course, it's mostly unconscious. We need to bring it into consciousness. So he changed the language, which is the first transformative thing he did. And he called them, rather than victim of an offender, he called them the author of the act and the receiver of the act. And I think that's brilliant, because also
the author and the receiver.
So whatever was done, someone did something and someone received. So the author and the receiver takes out a bit of that laden labeling, because also, the author of an act today could have been the victim or the receiver of the act for weeks and weeks and weeks, and finally said enough, right? And whatever. This happened to my nephew. He had a kid kicking his desk for weeks. He begged him not to. And one day my nephew kicked back hard. And who walks in? The teacher walks in the classroom and sees my nephew, right? So he got punished for that. So then the other different thing with this restorative circle is that the circle is on the outside, bearing witness and giving support and listening, but you pluck two people out who volunteer, and they're on the inside of the circle, and they do a dyad. They talk between them. And actually, there's one speaker and one listener. And so we teach the skill that mediators often use, which is that we reflect back to people what we hear them say in order to capture what they say, in order to give them the gift of being heard and understood, that attempt to understand them, that empathy. So what we do in this situation is we teach people to do this, and they reflect back. So we ask the question, who would like to be heard and by whom about the situation and its effects on you? That's the question. We ask the same question of everyone. And then a speaker volunteers and picks someone to listen. It could be the other person in the conflict. It could be someone that witnessed the conflict. It could be someone that didn't support them or that did support them, right? Depends, right? What they want to say. And then they speak in little bits. And the job of the job of the speaker is to speak authentically about their experience. The job of the listener is then, with these little bits, to reflect back what they hear, not what they think about what they hear, not their opinion, not adding but and giving their perspective, but wholly to give that person that gift of being heard and understood. And we do that until that person feels wholly heard and understood.
I see.
So the job of the facilitator or mediator is very sparse, right? But we will ask the person, did you feel that they captured everything? And they may say, well, yeah, mostly, but they didn't get the part at the end where I said, but you didn't speak up for me. Okay, would you say that again? And then the person reflects back. So by the end of this, then the person needs to feel wholly heard and understood. And then they go back in the circle, and the question again, who would like to speak and who would like to be heard and by whom? And we start over again. I did that with 14 people in an arts organization right in the middle of the pandemic. And these people hated each other. like hated each other.
Were they members of the same family or?
No, they were members of an arts community, a family who had
Okay.
been through a lot, and they all had one thing in common. They were kind of minority, and they all had one
Same
thing.
minority or different minority?
So a kind of, I'm not going
Okay.
to
All right.
speak it
Sure.
because they'll
It
be,
gives too much away. Sure.
yeah, it gives too much away. But they were, so they shared a trauma experience, they shared an experience, and they had rallied around a certain kind of artistic expression. And then they felt betrayed by something that happened.
I see.
And so the entire community just crumbled. So 14 people out of, I think, the 20 that were approached said, yes, I want to be a part of the circle. And and this is what we did. We did this for 3 different sessions, 3-hour sessions, until we even approached solving a problem. And I said to them, we're not going to solve problems for 3-hour sessions, right?
It
So,
takes time.
yeah, you need to be heard and understood. This is the kind of thing I would love to be doing in the Middle East. This is the kind of thing, I would love to be doing between Indigenous and non-Indigenous, between Black and white communities and left and right politically.
Well, all these areas that you mentioned need it. The Middle East, the indigenous, the left and right,
Yeah,
they do.
yeah.
Let's move on to your teaching practices. I know you mentor new mediators through York University and also your own Spectra workshops. Can you briefly tell us what these programs are all about? What is the most important skills or mindset you would like your mentees or people who come to your sessions to develop?
Yeah, thanks. Another great question. So yes, part of what I do is some mediators training, and I love it. I never thought I'd be a teacher. I fell into this kind of sideways and love it. So I coach for York University that has a wonderful mediation program. That's where I learned mediation. It's a certificate program in continuing studies. And I coach privately. And I also then, once mediators are trained, in order to get accreditation, and we are not regulated, our field, so we're self-regulated. So we have our own accreditation through our membership groups. So the next step for them after they've been trained at York or privately is to get their accreditation. And how they do that is they have to be supervised in doing 5 cases and do 5 mediation reports
Do
out
they
of
have
that.
to do internships? Is it the equivalent of
E-
what we may call in the corporate world internship?
Yeah, so we can't use that word anymore.
No?
Yeah, because when you have an intern, they stopped using that word because of, is it free or paid? But what we
I
do
see,
is
I see.
we run a practicum. And so during the pandemic, our member organization said that they were going to allow students to get 3 of their cases in a simulated format, kind of the way they trained, but at a higher level. And then they had to go out and get 2 more with real people. They could do it
Mm.
on Zoom or in person, but they had to be real clients. So what we do in my partnership is we train those 3 online cases. So we take groups and we do simulated cases.
I see.
Yeah, but we treat them like they're real from when
Right,
we
of
say
course.
go, like we have real clients in the room. So that's what I do. Um, so what do I do? I mean, there's many skills that mediators have. There's legal knowledge we have to have, but I have my own passions in terms of training for emotional intelligence, right? And it's rare that I define things by what they're not, although I did mention that when I talked about empathy. But I do make sure that my students know what mediation is not, because some of them come to it having seen stuff on TV or experiencing, and again, I don't want to speak ill of the legal profession, but when someone from an adversarial legal background comes into mediation and doesn't get trained, they bring some of that adversarial.
I
stuff with them. So if people are watching TV or thinking that, coming from that background, they think that mediation is where they come in, listen to people, and then tell them what to do. So that's
Yeah,
not. That's arbitration. That's being an
that's
arbiter
arbitration,
or
right?
judge. Yeah. So in mediation, self-determination is very important, and our skill is much more nuanced. So that's the first thing I want to know, why they want to be a mediator and how they see themselves. It's not just about notches and agreements, notches on the belt. And so one of the first things I do, because people come in thinking they have the solution, like that teacher, is I slow them down. And we all do this, everyone that trains will slow them down. Just get curious, spend a lot of time understanding the problem. As we know, you can't solve a problem you don't understand, and we slow them down. I remind them, whose problem is this, whose solutions are important. It's not ours, it's theirs. And then to respect the clients, I do believe, and this will ring to you, that we all have gems inside of us,
Absolutely.
right? Of insight, of self.
Inestimable gems.
Yes, inestimable, but God, I can't say the word today, but yes, what you said. And they're not only gifts and talents, they're insights and their self-knowledge, right? And also, people have their own lives. So we need to respect that that's what we're trying to mine. And I often talk to students about our job is to use our best tools and our best respect to mine those gems that people have inside them and discover what their needs, fears, aspirations are, and ultimately get to the solution that's perfect for them. I also encourage them to bring their lovely selves to the table. They are the other human at the table, to be mindful of their backstory, mindful of their filters, but then bring their own creativity and
Into it.
into it. The last thing I say to them, or one of the last things is, it's possible to have a joyful mediation, right?
That's good to know.
It is possible. I mean, when we approach conflict as an opportunity to learn, and I call mediation a learning conversation. At the end of the day, I may say to my clients, we may or may not have a solution at the end of this session, but if we've learned something, it's a good day.
It's progress. So,
Yeah.
your experiences spans diverse cultural, economic, and professional backgrounds. Like in some of the examples you've mentioned, we've learned that. What have you learned about fostering understanding between people who seem worlds apart? They're not in the same sphere, whether it's culturally or otherwise.
Yes. So I'm going to hearken back to our first session together when I talked about human interest. So on the surface, or not even on the surface, in one realm, we are all different and we can celebrate that difference. And our cultures, our generational differences, gender and identity differences, talents, different talents and faculties, personalities. We look different, right? And we can celebrate all that. What's important in conflict is to also understand that at our core and essence, we have those same 13 universal needs that I identified through my field research, again, of safety, respect, acknowledgement, identity, to be heard and understood, joy, learning, making meaning for ourselves, fulfillment. So if we can get to those in a way that's creative, then that's a good day in mediation. And that's where I like to start. I don't like to tell people they have something in common because I don't think they're ready to hear it.
You want them to explore it, to
I want
discover
them to
it?
discover it on their own, right? So in family mediation, that's as simple as saying at the beginning, so folks, I don't know your magical children. Could you please describe them for me, right? Make them jump off the page for me. I want to hear all about them and I want to hear what you love to do with them. And one of the reasons I do this, I don't tell them, oh, you both love your children. That's kind of insulting. Of course they do.
Of course they do,
Of
yes.
course they do. I assume that they both love their children. But since they're demonizing each other and think I have nothing in common with that person, I'm not going to tell them. They know they have their children in common. I want them to, again, viscerally experienced that. So I get them talking about their children, kind of magical what happens there. So I can tell you a couple of stories about that, but I want to mention other things. I like to find meaning. One of my favorite things to do is intercultural mediation. And I love to find meaning in things and kind of lead people to discover that there's something at the core of that that's really, really common. So one of the things, I was in marketing for a while, not a mediator yet, and someone called me up because they knew I had a Jewish background. And they said, every October, the Rabbinical Council comes to us. She was the manufacturing manager in the manufacturing facility. She said they come to us, they make us shut down for 2 days and clean the place from top to bottom. And then they come in and they rock back and forth in front of the machines and they mumble
the Jewish people
mumble a prayer.
Okay, I've seen that on El all the time.
This is the way she described it, though. So I have to get into her head the way she was seeing it, right? They rock back and forth and they mumble something, I guess, in Hebrew, and then they give us a certificate. And it's a kosher certificate, so we can say our product is kosher, and then they leave. And she said, what, can you tell us what it's about? And so I stopped, first of all, to think how odd that looks to people who don't understand what it is, right? And it's the way they pray, and there's many reasons why they do that.
Prayer. Because of what they put on their shoulders and what they're put on their forehead. You see them in a state of prayer.
Yeah, but she didn't understand the whole process. So I said to her, tell me, do you make Thanksgiving dinner for your family? And she said, yeah. I said, so do you clean before they come, before you start preparing? You make sure the surface is clean? And she said, of course. And then I said, and then at Thanksgiving dinner, does someone say a prayer for Thanksgiving? Be thankful for the food and maybe bless the cook that made it? She said, yeah. I said, so you're making food for an entire nation. And so they're asking you to do a deep cleaning once a year. I hope you do it more than that, right? And then they're blessing your kitchen and the people who prepare the food. She got so excited. She went, oh my God, okay, I gotta go. I gotta tell everybody what you just said. And it was just like what I was trying to do was go to the core of an experience that manifests very differently.
Right.
On either end.
Understand.
And find the meaning at the core. And this is some of the most joyous, exciting work I do. And I love it because, at the core, we are pretty much the same, but we manifest it so differently.
That's wonderful. Mardi, we are getting to the end of our time limit for this week's episode. Thank you for being with us. And in this episode and the one last week, I enjoyed our conversation immensely.
Me too.
Huge thanks to our viewers. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you've already subscribed to our YouTube channel. If not, simply pushing that subscribe button will go a long way in supporting this program. And if you want to help us even more, click like and maybe drop a heart in the comments section, whatever color you like, the color of your choice. It's always a pleasure speaking with wonderful, intelligent, kind-hearted people on this program and bring these discussions to you, beautiful viewers, wherever you are on this beautiful planet of ours. You know our motto, one world, one family, and that's what we are working towards, and that's why we have these dialogues. Thank you, Mardi, for helping our process last week and this week. As always, I enjoyed this conversation so much. And when the weather gets better, we should have coffee.
Absolutely. Thank you for this vehicle you've created. Thanks for making meaning and joy for all of us.
Joy for all of us. Thank you. Bye, Mardi, and bye, everyone.